Good morning. Today in this video, I'm going to talk about Aelfwine and the Red Book of Westmarch, Tolkien's fictional, source material for the Silmarillion, Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, where all this came from. It's important to know in the evolution of his mythology. As you know from, if you've read The Lord of the Rings, you know that the Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings and material supplied by Merry and Pippin, and they all come from the Red Book of Westmarch. Also includes, Adventures of Tom Bombadil, Tolkien's book of poetry that he released before he died. So, in the early Silmarillion, the Book of Lost Tales, you had Ariel, or Aelfwine, as he would later call him. Originally, it was that he went to the island of Tol Eressëa, which would become England, the island where England, Scotland, Wales is on. Part of it would break off, become Ireland. He would go there, learn from the elves, their history. And of course, Tolkien would change that, and Tol Eressëa would become just not England anymore. Ariel would be renamed Aelfwine, would come from England in the Anglo-Saxon period, when the Anglo-Saxons ruled over England. And he learned from the Elvish lore masters, their history, which is mostly about them, but men come into it. And so you have all these materials that Aelfwine looked at, and then he translated them into his native language, Anglo-Saxon, or Old English, as it's called. And then from that, Tolkien would translate into our modern English the Silmarillion. Now, Silmarillion, as published by Christopher Tolkien, is based off of all of his, J.R.R. Tolkien's writings. References to Aelfwine cut out. Now, it's not very clear whether or not he abandoned this concept completely. That concept and the concept of the hobbits getting all this stuff and translating into their language and writing down their story, they're not mutually exclusive. I mean, Aelfwine was still a big part of this, later in Tolkien's life, but of course now you had the Red Book of Westmarch, which contains the Hobbit, the Lord of the Rings, like I've said. And you had Bilbo's translations from the Elvish, which we would assume is the Silmarillion. And there's a lot that Tolkien wrote for the Silmarillion, because the Book of Lost Tales, turned into the Sketch of the Mythology, which is just a summary for a friend of his who he lent the Lay of the Children of Hurin to, just to explain, what's going on in the story. So you had the background to it, which of course morphed into the Quenta Noldorinwa, which morphed into the Quenta Silmarillion. But then you had the Lammas, or Account of Tongues. You had the Annals of Aman, the Annals of Beleriand, and of course, the Children of Hurin, the Lays, all that stuff. That would be, of course, where we get the Silmarillion. And then, like I said, the Hobbits had their book, so you got these two. And so you could possibly conceive of Tolkien still, keeping the character of Aelfwine around and this new thing that he did for Lord of the Rings. And it's from these materials that we get what we got. And I think it's really cool how he did that. And I mean, this is not the first time that's been done. The Welsh mythology, their legends, were compiled in a book, also called the Red Book, and there's another one too. But so we have a real-world example of this, and of course we have translations of that into English, as we do with all, like the Greek myths and Finnish, the Kalevala, and the Norse sagas and all of that. And since he studied that stuff and was interested in that kind of thing and taught that stuff, it all makes sense. And this is all important if you want to understand Tolkien and how everything came to be. Stuff that nobody will ever be able to duplicate. Trust me, I've tried. It can't be done. And I don't want to kind of also be a copycat, so yeah, I don't. But there's a lot of things that I've changed in my own stuff, but I'm mostly using what I wrote for like Dungeons and Dragons campaigns and stuff like that. I don't really write anymore, but yeah, the massive undertaking this guy took throughout his whole life, all the stuff that he did, is very fascinating, and I will continue to make videos on this, especially if people like it enough, because I know there's interest out there for it, especially with the Rings of Power coming out, which, whether it does well or not, doesn't matter, because people will read these books and learn all this stuff for themselves. But yeah, that's all for this video. Well, please like and subscribe if you enjoy this video and all my other videos, and I will talk to you all next time. Have a good one.